The first time I saw Eleanor after the divorce, she was standing in the produce section of a grocery store, staring at a bunch of kale like it held the secrets to the universe. Her hand, the one with the slight tremor she'd had for years, was wrapped so tight around the handle of her shopping basket that her knuckles were bone white. I almost walked past her. It would have been easier. The divorce had been final for 2 years. David had made his choice, traded me in for a younger model with blonder hair and a blander laugh. The kids were with me every other weekend, their backpacks full of the silence where their father used to be. I had no reason to stop. But then she looked up, and I saw it. Not the composed, elegant woman who had always welcomed me into her home with a warm smile and a plate of her legendary almond cookies. I saw a woman drowning. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. She looked lost. "Clara," she breathed my name, and it wasn't an accusation, it was a life raft. "Eleanor," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "Are you all right?" She shook her head, a tiny, almost imperceptible motion. "I can't remember," she whispered, gesturing vaguely at the kale. "I can't remember if I'm supposed to get this. For the... It doesn't matter." She set the basket down, her hand shaking violently now. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have..." I stepped closer. "It's okay. It happens to everyone." "No," she said, her eyes finally meeting mine. They were filled with a deep, chilling fear. "It's getting worse. And I'm alone." That's when the dam broke. She told me, right there between the organic avocados and the hydroponic lettuce, about the diagnosis. Early onset Alzheimer's, the kind that steals you from yourself, piece by piece. She told me about David's visits, or rather, the lack of them. He'd been by once, 3 months ago, with Jessica, his new wife. They'd stayed for 20 minutes. 20 minutes to tell his mother they were putting her in a home. A good one, they'd said. The best money could buy. "I told them no," Eleanor said, a flicker of her old steel surfacing. "This is my home. I've lived here for 40 years. I'll die here." "And what did David say?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "He said I was being difficult, that he had his own family now, his own life. He said he couldn't be burdened." The word hung in the air, sharp and poisonous. He had used the same word about me once. Difficult. Burdened. I looked at this woman, my second mother for a decade, the grandmother of my children, now discarded like an old piece of furniture. And I saw a path, not one of revenge, not yet, one of simple, defiant humanity. I picked up her basket. "Come on," I said, "let's get you home. I'll make us some tea. And I know how to make a mean kale salad." It wasn't a grand, calculated scheme. It was a series of small, accumulating decisions. I started by driving Eleanor to her doctor's appointments, the ones she'd been missing because she couldn't remember the dates. I learned the language of her disease, the difference between sundowning and a urinary tract infection, the way her anxiety would spike if the blinds weren't opened at precisely 7 a.m. The first few weeks were brutal. She'd have moments of terrifying clarity, where she knew exactly what was happening to her. "I'm disappearing, Clara," she said one afternoon, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, "from the inside out. And the worst part is, I know it, for now." Other times, she'd look at me with a stranger's suspicion. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" I'd have to show her photo albums, point to pictures of her with my kids, with me at their birthday parties. "That's me, Eleanor. That's Clara. David's Clara." The mention of his name was a litmus test. Sometimes she'd just look confused. Other times a shadow of pain would cross her face. "David," she'd murmur. "My son. He doesn't come to see me anymore. He's busy." "Yes," I'd agree, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "He's busy." My own life became a balancing act. I worked from home as much as I could, a freelance graphic designer, my laptop perpetually open on Eleanor's kitchen table. The kids, Lily and Max, would come with me. At first they were hesitant. Grandma Eleanor was different now, they'd say. She asked the same questions over and over, but I taught them patience. "She's still in there," I'd tell them. "She just gets lost sometimes." Slowly, a new rhythm emerged. Lily would help me sort Eleanor's pills into a daily organizer. Max would sit with her and watch old black and white musicals, explaining the plot to her each time she forgot. Eleanor, in her lucid moments, would beam at them. "My beautiful grandchildren," she'd say, her voice full of wonder. Look at you. Just look at you. In those moments, the exhaustion, the frustration, the sheer heartbreak of it all melted away. We weren't just helping her. She was still, in every way that mattered, their grandmother, and mine. They showed up on a Sunday. A fucking Sunday. The one day I tried to carve out for my kids. A day free from deadlines and medication schedules. I heard the sharp, insistent knock on the door. Eleanor was napping, a rare moment of peace. I opened the door to find David and Jessica on the porch, dressed in matching athleisure wear, like they'd just stepped off a yacht and onto a landfill. "Clara," David said, his voice a practiced blend of condescension and false concern. It was the same voice he'd used when he told me he was leaving. "It's just not working, Clara. We've grown apart." "David," I replied, not moving from the doorway. Jessica gave me a tight, professional smile. "We're here to see Eleanor." She was holding a single sad orchid in a plastic pot. "She's sleeping." "We'll wait," David said, already trying to push past me. I stood my ground. "No, you won't. She's been sick for over a year. Where have you been?" David's eyes narrowed. "That's none of your business. This is my mother. You have no legal right to keep me from her." "And you have no moral right to disturb her peace," I shot back. "She had a bad night. Confusion, anxiety. She was asking for you, crying for you. But you were busy." Something flickered in his eyes, a micro-flinch of guilt, but Jessica was quicker. "We have a right to assess the situation," she said, her voice clipped. "We've heard you've essentially moved in. We're concerned about undue influence." Undue influence. The legal term hung in the air. That's when I knew. This wasn't a visit. It was a reconnaissance mission. "Concerned?" I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You abandoned her. You wanted to stuff her in a home so you wouldn't have to deal with her. I'm the one who's here at 3 a.m. when she doesn't know where she is. I'm the one who holds her hand when she cries." From behind me, a soft, sleepy voice. "Clara? Who is it, dear?" Eleanor stood at the foot of the stairs, wrapped in her old housecoat, her white hair a soft halo around her face. She squinted at the doorway. David's entire demeanor changed. He plastered on a smile. "Mom, it's me, David. I brought Jessica to see you." Eleanor stared at him for a long, terrible moment. I saw her mind working, trying to connect the face to the context. Then, her gaze drifted to Jessica, and her expression hardened with a clarity I hadn't seen in months. "I know who you are," she said, her voice steady. "You're the woman who broke up my son's marriage. You're the reason I don't see my grandchildren enough." She looked back at David. "And you. You have some nerve showing up here now." She turned and walked slowly back up the stairs, leaving a silence so profound I could hear my own heartbeat. The look on Jessica's face was priceless, a cocktail of fury and mortification. David just stood there, speechless. I closed the door. A month later, Eleanor passed away in her sleep. Peacefully, the hospice nurse said. A blessing. I was the one who found her, her hand cool and still in mine. The grief was a physical blow, a deep, hollow ache in my chest. I'd lost my mother again. The kids were devastated. They'd come to love the grandmother who forgot their names, but never forgot to ask if they were happy. The reading of the will was a small affair in the office of Arthur Pendleton, Eleanor's lawyer for 40 years. A wizened man with kind eyes and a voice like dry leaves. David and Jessica were there, dressed inappropriately in casual clothes, radiating a smug entitlement that made my skin crawl. I sat alone, still numb. Arthur cleared his throat. "I'll get straight to it. The terms of Eleanor's will are quite clear. To her son, David, she leaves the sum of $1 and a letter, which I will give you after this meeting. To her former daughter-in-law, Clara Vance, she leaves the entirety of her estate, the house on Maple Street, its contents, and all associated financial assets." The silence was nuclear. Then Jessica's chair scraped back violently. "This is outrageous!" she spat, her face contorted. "This is elder abuse! She was manipulated! We'll contest this!" David just stared at me, his face pale, his mouth open. You did this," he stammered, pointing a shaking finger. "You fucking snake! You weaseled your way in there, turned her against me." I felt a surge of cold, righteous calm. "I did nothing of the sort, David. I was there. You weren't. It's that simple." "Simple?" he laughed, a hysterical edge to his voice. "You think a judge will see it that way? You, the bitter ex-wife? This belongs to his family," Jessica shrieked, pointing at David. "To his children." My children, I corrected her, my voice dangerously low. The ones you and your husband see every other weekend when it's convenient. The ones Eleanor helped me raise for 10 years. The ones she watched for me when I couldn't afford a sitter. They were her family, long before you ever slithered onto the scene. Arthur intervened, his voice calm but firm. The will is ironclad. It was drawn up 6 months ago, witnessed by her doctor and her neighbor, both of whom can attest to her sound mind at the time. She was very specific in her intentions. A week later, a thick envelope arrived at my apartment, addressed in Arthur's neat handwriting. Inside was the deed to the house and a smaller sealed envelope. On the front, in Eleanor's familiar, elegant script, it said, "For Clara." I waited until the kids were in bed. I poured a glass of wine, sat at my tiny kitchen table, and opened it. The letter was dated a few days after David and Jessica's disastrous visit. "My dearest Clara, if you are reading this, then I am finally at peace. The confusion is gone, and I can think clearly one last time. I need you to know a few things. First, thank you. Thank you for not abandoning me. Thank you for seeing me, not just my illness. You gave me back my dignity, my home, and most importantly, my grandchildren. In my darkest moments when I didn't know my own name, I knew your voice was a safe one. That is a gift beyond measure. Second, I know why you came that day in the grocery store. It wasn't just pity, it was defiance. You saw a woman discarded by the same man who discarded you, and you refused to let it happen. You chose to be the person he never could be. That strength is what I admire most about you. Third, about David. My son was not always a cruel man, but he became one. He chose selfishness so many times that it became his nature. He chose that woman over his wife, over his children, and ultimately, over his own mother. The dollar I left him is not an insult. It's a reminder. A reminder that in the end, he gave nothing, and so he received nothing of value. The house is not a reward for your care, Clara. It is a debt repaid. It is for all the nights you stayed up with me, for all the times you held my hand, for all the times you spoke to me with love when my mind was a fog. It is for the laughter of my grandchildren that filled these rooms again. Use it. Fill it with your own life. Make it a home, not just a house. Let the kids run in the garden. Plant roses. Be happy. That is the only revenge worth taking. With all my love, Mom." I read it 3 times. By the end, the wine was untouched, and the paper was spotted with my tears. She had seen it all. She had known exactly what she was doing. She had given me not just a house, but a legacy. A final, irrefutable verdict on the man she'd raised and the woman I'd become. The legal threats started the next day. A letter from their lawyer, a shark with a storefront office and a website full of stock photos, accusing me of fraud, undue influence, and conversion. They demanded I relinquish the estate to avoid a costly and public court battle. I didn't respond. Instead, I took the kids and we moved into Eleanor's house. We painted Lily's room a soft lavender. We set up Max's Lego table in the sunroom where Eleanor used to do her puzzles. Every creak of the floorboards, every shaft of sunlight, felt like her blessing. They escalated. David started showing up, circling the block in his leased BMW. He confronted me in the driveway one Saturday while the kids were inside. "You can't do this, Clara," he said, his jaw tight. "You're poisoning them against me. If you had a shred of decency, you'd sell this place and split it. It belongs to my family." "Your family?" I echoed, incredulous. "You mean the one you abandoned? The one you couldn't be bothered to visit? This house belongs to the person who cared for the woman who lived in it. That's me." "We will drag this through every court," Jessica added, appearing from the passenger seat. "We'll tell them how you preyed on a vulnerable, sick old woman, how you manipulated her. We'll make sure everyone knows what you did." I looked at her, this woman who had helped dismantle my marriage, now preaching to me about morality. The irony was so thick you could bottle it. "You want to talk about integrity in a court of law?" I asked, my voice calm. "Please, let's do that. Let's put David on the stand and ask him under oath about the last time he saw his mother before she got sick. Let's ask him why he has no medical power of attorney. Let's ask him about the phone records that will show he didn't call her for 6 months before she died. Let's call your realtor and ask about the house you were so eager to sell right after her diagnosis. The proceeds would have been nice, wouldn't they, David? A nice down payment on a vacation property?" David's face went slack. I hadn't known about the house sale for sure. It was a guess, a logical assumption based on their greed. But the look on his face told me I'd hit the bullseye. You're bluffing, Jessica said, but her voice had lost its edge. Am I? I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. I have a voicemail from David here threatening me. I have a dozen texts. I have a diary I kept of every single day I spent with Eleanor, signed off on by her hospice nurse. I have witnesses. You have a guy in a cheap suit and a whole lot of desperation. Go ahead. File your lawsuit. Let's see who comes out looking like the monster. They didn't file. Instead, the pressure started to show. A cousin of David's, one who had been conspicuously absent for years, suddenly called me. Her voice was dripping with false sympathy. Clara, honey, we're all just so worried about you. This must be so stressful. David is family, you know. Maybe we could all sit down and talk. I hung up. Another relative, a great-aunt I'd met twice, sent a long, rambling email about family heirlooms and things that rightfully belonged to the bloodline. I deleted it. The calls and messages were a chorus of opportunists, all of them circling the carcass of Eleanor's estate. They hadn't cared about her when she was alive. They hadn't visited, called, or sent a card. But now that there was money and property involved, they were suddenly family, bound by blood and tradition. The hypocrisy was staggering. It was David himself who finally broke. He showed up at the door one evening, alone. He looked terrible. His expensive shirt was wrinkled, his eyes were bloodshot. The carefully constructed facade of the successful, happy man had crumbled. "Please, Clara," he said, his voice rough. Just let me see them. The kids. They won't take my calls." "Why would they, David?" I asked, my voice weary. "You've given them no reason to." "Jessica left me," he blurted out. "She said I was a loser, a failure. She said I couldn't even secure my own inheritance." He laughed, a broken sound. Turns out, her love wasn't exactly unconditional. I felt nothing. Not a flicker of satisfaction, not a shred of pity. Just a vast, empty indifference. The man I had once loved, the father of my children, was a stranger to me, a sad, pathetic stranger. "I'm sorry to hear that, David," I said, and I meant it, in the same way I'd be sorry to hear about a minor accident involving someone I used to know. But that doesn't change anything. The kids need stability. They need to know they can count on someone. You've never given them that. His face crumpled. "But I'm their father." "That's a title," I said. "It's not an action. Go home, David, get some help. Maybe in a few years after you've done the work you can try to be a part of their lives. But not now, not like this." I closed the door. This time I locked it. It's been a year. The legal threats are a distant memory. David, I heard through the grapevine, moved to another state. The great-aunt stopped emailing. The chorus of greedy relatives fell silent when they realized there was nothing to be gained. I'm sitting on the back porch of the house on Maple Street. The garden Eleanor loved is in full riotous bloom, roses just like she said. Lily and Max are in the yard, laughing as they chase the neighbor's dog with a hose. Their laughter is the sound of the house now. It's a home. I think about Eleanor often. I think about her in the quiet moments, when I'm having my morning coffee, or when I'm baking her almond cookie recipe, the one I finally mastered. The bitter almond, I've learned, is a key ingredient. It cuts through the sweet, gives it depth. You don't notice it at first, but it lingers on the tongue, a complex, unforgettable finish. That's what this feeling is. Not sweet, cloying victory. It's the taste of almonds, a little bit bitter, a little bit sweet, and perfectly, utterly earned.
The keycard in my pocket felt like a live coal, burning a hole through the fabric and into my thigh. I kept my hand closed around it, the sharp edges of the plastic digging into my palm. It was real. This was real. The elevator at the W Hotel chimed softly, a polite, obnoxious sound. Floor 14. The doors slid open onto a hallway of muted grays and soft, indirect lighting. It smelled like lemongrass and money. It smelled like her. 2 years. The number pulsed in my head with every step I took down the carpeted corridor. 730 days of feeling like I was going crazy, of asking myself, is it me? Am I not enough? Am I paranoid? Of her telling me I was exactly those things. Bitter, resentful, paranoid, controlling. "It's a girl's trip, babe, I just need to decompress. You wouldn't understand." Right, decompress in the W Hotel in Scottsdale with her work friend, Max, the one she swore she'd only known for a few months, the one whose name started popping up on her phone at 11 p.m. with a simple, "Hey, you up?" I stopped in front of room 1427. A sliver of light bled from underneath the door, I could hear the low thump of music from inside, a bass line I couldn't quite place. My heart was a trapped bird against my ribs. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times in the black, sleepless hours of the past week, ever since the private investigator's email had landed in my inbox with its attached photos and the subject line, requested surveillance, Scottsdale, AZ. The photos weren't graphic, they didn't need to be, they were damning in their domesticity. Her laughing at someone out of frame, her head thrown back. Her holding hands with a man who wasn't me while they walked through a farmer's market. Her kissing him goodbye, a quick, familiar peck as she got into a car. 2 years. The PI had traced it back. 2 years of dinners out, of hotel check-ins, of little gifts on her credit card that she'd explained away as treating myself. 2 years of her coming home to me, crawling into our bed and letting me hold her. I slid the keycard into the slot. The light blinked green. I pushed the door open. The room was a suite. A half-empty bottle of Dom Perignon sat in a bucket on the coffee table, next to 2 flutes. Her new weekender bag, the one she'd bought last month and told me was a knockoff, was draped over a chair. Clothes were scattered on the floor like a breadcrumb trail leading to the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. I didn't knock. I pushed it open. And there she was. My wife, Chloe. Naked. Tangled in the crisp white hotel sheets with a man I'd never met, but whose face I knew intimately from the PI's photos. Max. The scene froze, a tableau of flesh and betrayal. Chloe's eyes flew open, wide and glassy. For a second there was pure, unadulterated shock. Then, a flicker of something else. Calculation? Fear? She opened her mouth but no sound came out. Max scrambled, a flurry of limbs grabbing for the sheet. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. All the anguish, the self-doubt, the years of being told I was the problem, it all crystallized into a cold, hard diamond in my chest. I reached into my jacket pocket, but not for the keycard this time. I pulled out the manila envelope, thick with legal papers, and tossed it onto the foot of the bed. It landed with a soft, heavy thud. "Surprise," I said. My voice was steady. It surprised me. "Your girl trip is over. It's divorce papers. I've already signed them." The silence in that hotel room was deafening, broken only by the rustle of sheets as Max finally managed to cover himself. He looked nothing like the photos. In person, he just looked ordinary, scared. A guy in his late 30s with a receding hairline and a gym body that suddenly seemed pathetic. Chloe just stared at the envelope, then at me. The shock was morphing, her features hardening into something defensive. This is not what it looks like," she stammered, pulling the sheet up to her chin. A reflex, as if modesty mattered now. "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Just don't. I know about the last 2 years. I know about the hotel in Portland. The weekend you were visiting your sister. I know about the cabin in Big Bear. I've got photos, credit card receipts, phone records. It's all in there." The color drained from her face. Max, to his credit, looked like he wanted to sink into the floor and disappear. He started mumbling something, reaching for his pants. "Look, man, I'm sorry, I didn't know she was—" "Get out," I said, not even looking at him. My eyes were locked on Chloe. "Get dressed and get out. The adults are talking." He scrambled, grabbing his clothes, practically falling over himself as he fled into the main room. The door to the suite slammed a moment later, and then it was just us, Chloe and me, and the wreckage of 7 years. "You followed me," she whispered, her voice trembling with a manufactured hurt. "You hired someone to follow me." "You fucked someone else for 2 years," I shot back, the venom finally seeping into my voice. "Don't you dare try to make this about my methods." She got out of bed, wrapping the sheet around herself like a toga. She stood there, the picture of wounded indignation. "I was going to tell you," she said, her eyes darting away, then back to me, trying to find a foothold. It was a mistake. A series of mistakes. It got out of hand. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk, Chloe. A mistake is sending a text to the wrong person. I stepped closer. 2 years of secret hotel rooms and lies isn't a mistake. It's a double life. Her eyes hardened. The scared, caught in the act look was gone, replaced by something colder. "You don't know what it was like. You were so checked out, so focused on work. You made me feel invisible." The old familiar guilt tried to surface. Was I? Did I? I crushed it. Don't you dare. I asked you for 2 years what was wrong. I begged you to talk to me. You told me I was being paranoid. You told me I was imagining things. You made me feel like I was the crazy one. I thought back to all those nights, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, my mind a hurricane of doubt. I remembered finding a receipt for a romantic dinner for 2, and she'd laughed it off, saying she'd treated a girlfriend who was going through stakon fraba, sigroverbdamd, otsperkeller, bandor nang spa den koffer obri paim, bandor durin dat skrein kon na per omber mine per. I remembered the way she'd flinch when I touched her, the new perfume she wore, the way she'd guard her phone like a state secret. She hadn't just cheated, she'd systematically dismantled my trust in my own perception. She'd made me an accessory to my own cuckolding. This isn't a discussion, I said, pointing at the envelope. That is a dissolution of marriage. I'm being more than generous. You can keep the car, you can keep the furniture. I just want out. My lawyer will be in touch. I turned to leave. I had what I came for. The confrontation. The look on her face. The keycard in my pocket had cooled. It was just a piece of plastic now. Her voice stopped me at the bedroom door. It was laced with a bitter, incredulous anger. You know what? This is exactly why. This right here. You're so cold. So cruel. You couldn't wait to pounce, could you? You've been wanting to do this for years. You're just a bitter, resentful person who was looking for an excuse. I turned back. The audacity of it stole my breath for a second. I'm bitter and resentful for not being able to see past you fucking another man for 730 days? It was just a sexual thing, she spat, the words tumbling out in a rush. It didn't mean anything. It was about feeling seen, feeling desired. It had nothing to do with you, but you'll never understand that. You'll just use this to play the victim. Just a sexual thing, for 2 years. The words hung in the air, and in them, I heard the truth. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she got caught. She was sorry for the outcome, not the action. There was no regret in her eyes for the pain she'd caused, only frustration at the mess she now had to deal with. She felt seen. She felt desired. By him. I didn't say another word. I just walked out. The drive back from Scottsdale was a blur of desert and asphalt. I don't remember stopping, don't remember the music or the podcasts. I just remember the feeling of the cold, hard diamond in my chest finally beginning to crack. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, no, our driveway, it had shattered, and the grief flooded in. I sat in the dark car for an hour, in the garage, letting it wash over me. 2 years. The math wasn't just about time, it was about intimacy. It was about every time I'd held her and she'd been thinking of him. Every time we'd made love, I'd been sharing her with a ghost I didn't know existed. The next few days were a mechanical blur. My phone blew up. Chloe's mom called, sobbing, asking if we could talk this out. I sent her to voicemail. Chloe's texts evolved from defensive to pleading to a bizarre, calculated sweetness. Thinking of you. Remember our first trip to Big Sur? I miss us. I didn't respond. My lawyer, a pit bull named Diana, who didn't blink at the evidence, told me to maintain radio silence. Let her spin, she said. She's going to try every trick in the book. The goal now is to get you out clean. A week after the hotel, I was home, packing up my office. It was my sanctuary, the one room in the house that was truly mine. I was boxing up books when I heard a car pull into the driveway. A moment later, the front door opened. It was Chloe. She looked wrecked. No makeup, hair a mess, red-rimmed eyes. She was wearing an old faded Stanford sweatshirt of mine she'd commandeered years ago. The sight of it was a gut punch. It was a deliberate costume, a uniform of the past. Please, she said, her voice small. Please just listen. For 5 minutes. You owe me that. I owed her nothing. But I was curious. And maybe some sick, hopeful part of me, the part that still remembered the woman I married, wanted to hear what she had to say. I leaned against the doorframe of my office, arms crossed. You have 5 minutes. She stepped closer, hands clasped in front of her. I'm a mess, she began. I haven't eaten. I haven't slept. I can't believe I did this to us. To you. The tears started, well-timed and perfect. I ended it with him, completely. It was nothing. He was nothing. A symptom, not the disease. And what was the disease? I asked, my voice flat. Us. Me. I don't know. She put a hand on her chest. I lost myself. I felt invisible, and instead of being a grown-up and talking to you, I did this horrible, selfish thing. I made a terrible, terrible mistake. There it was again. Mistake. Singular. Not the 2 years of calculated deceit, not the hundreds of lies. A mistake. I want to fix it, she whispered, taking another step. I want to fix us. I'll do anything. Counseling. A trial separation. Whatever you need. I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you. Her eyes searched mine, looking for a crack, a weakness. I thought about the PI's timeline. The affair had started 6 months after we'd bought this house. A house we chose together, painted together. All the while she was building a life with him on the side. I thought about all the weekends I'd worked on the garden, thinking I was building a future for us, while she was at the spa with Max. Anything? I asked. Yes, she breathed, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Anything. Then tell me why, I said. Not the bullshit about feeling invisible. The real why. Did you love him? She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but I saw it. No, she said quickly. It was never about love. It was just the attention, the newness. It was exciting. It made me feel good about myself. It was just a sexual thing. She said it again. Just a sexual thing. She was trying to minimize it, to make it palatable. But all I heard was that for 2 years, the excitement of fucking someone else was more important than the truth with me. The attention he gave her was more valuable than the life I was trying to build. And now, I asked, now that it's over, how do you feel? The tears welled up again, but this time, they felt different. Performative. I feel like I've destroyed the best thing in my life. I feel empty and scared. Not regret. Emptiness. The fun thing was taken away. The toy was gone. She didn't regret the affair. She regretted the fallout. I'm sorry, Chloe, I said, and for the first time I felt a flicker of something other than rage. It was pity. I can't. Chloe's face crumpled. You can't what? You can't even try? You're just going to throw away 7 years without a fight? You had the fight for 2 years, I said, my voice quiet. I was just the last to know. She left shortly after, the performance over, replaced by a sullen silence. The texts resumed, but they were angrier now. Little jabs. Everyone thinks you're being extreme. My mom is heartbroken. You're not the man I thought you were. People make mistakes. That was the new chorus from her family, from the few mutual friends she'd managed to turn. People make mistakes, and you're being so harsh. I started to feel like I was living in a parallel universe. A mistake is a one-night stand you confess to the next morning, racked with guilt. Not a secret relationship that spans 2 fucking years. I needed someone who understood, someone who didn't need the backstory. That's when I thought of her. The other woman. Not Max's wife or girlfriend. He was conveniently single. The coward. No, I thought of the woman in the PI's photos, the one who was always just on the periphery, the one Chloe had texted me about, saying, my new work friend Maya is so cool, you'd love her. Maya. The one Chloe had been using as an alibi for girls' nights that were really nights with Max. The PI had her contact info. He'd interviewed her as part of his initial research. It turned out, Maya had been unwittingly covering for Chloe for months. Chloe would tell her she was going on a date with this great new guy Max, and could she please just say they were together if I asked. Maya, thinking Chloe was just dating around, agreed, not wanting to get in the middle of a friend's marriage. When the PI showed her the full timeline, the fact that Max was the married woman's affair partner, not a new boyfriend, Maya was livid. She felt used, duped. I reached out. We met at a quiet coffee shop in Pasadena, the kind with exposed brick and too many people on laptops. Maya was a few years younger than us, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense way of speaking. She was still angry. I can't believe she did that to you, she said, stirring her latte aggressively. To me, I felt like such an idiot. She'd text me, hey, just a heads up, if my husband asks, I was with you tonight. I thought she was just, covering her bases on a new relationship. I didn't know she was married. It's not your fault, I said. She's a professional. She made me complicit in her bullshit. Maya shook her head. So, what's your plan? Just the divorce? I don't know yet, I admitted. But talking to you, it helps to know I'm not the crazy one. That the story she's telling people, the unhappy wife, checked out husband story, isn't the whole truth. Maya leaned forward. My ex-boyfriend cheated on me, she said, with a girl from his work, and his friends all told me I was being controlling and insecure. The gaslighting is the worst part. It makes you doubt your own reality. They tell you you're crazy for reacting to the thing they, destroy. Exactly, I said. The word came out with more force than I intended. She looked me in the eye and told me I was a bitter, resentful person for not getting over it, for not giving her a chance. Maya scoffed. The audacity is breathtaking. So what do you do when you're not allowed to be angry about the thing that happened, when they rewrite the story so you're the villain? It was a rhetorical question, but it landed in my chest like a dart. What do you do? We talked for another hour. About her ex, about my wife, about the strange, fucked-up kinship you form with someone who's been burned by the same liar. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't about revenge. It was just validating. To be seen and believed, to have someone say, yes, that is as insane as it sounds. As I drove home, a thought started to form, not a plan exactly, more like a growing awareness of the weapon they'd handed me. The gaslighting, the rewriting of history, the painting me as the bitter, resentful one. What if I used their own logic against them? What if I gave Chloe exactly what she was so afraid of? The reconciliation phase was a masterclass in manipulation. Chloe, realizing that tears and accusations of bitterness weren't working, switched tactics. She became the dutiful, remorseful wife. She started leaving little notes for me around the house, thinking of you. I'm so sorry. I'll wait forever. She sent flowers to my office with a card signed, with all my love, always. She started cooking my favorite meals and leaving them in the fridge with cling wrap and a sticky note. For my hard-working husband. My friends, the few who hadn't taken sides, started to waver. She seems really sorry, man. She's really trying. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't see the performance. The climax of her campaign came on a Thursday night. I was in the living room, reading a brief for work, when she came downstairs. She was wearing a silk robe, the kind she wore on our honeymoon. She walked over slowly and knelt beside my chair. I miss you, I know she whispered, her hand on my knee. I miss us. I miss the way you used to touch me. I'm begging you, let me come home, let me try. Her hand slid higher. It was so calculated, so clinical in its intent, that I almost laughed. This was her Hail Mary. The reconciliation sex. The proof for her own narrative. See? I tried. I offered myself to him. And he still rejected me. He really is the cold, bitter one. I looked down at her. Her eyes were wide, pleading, but I saw the calculation behind them. She wasn't offering herself to me out of love or desire. She was offering herself as a bargaining chip, a piece of evidence to be used later. She wanted to be able to say, I tried everything, even sex, and he still wouldn't forgive me. Chloe, get up, I said, my voice tired. Please, she whispered, leaning in. Let me make it up to you. Let me show you how much I want you. It was only ever a sexual thing with him. Meaningless. But with you it's real. Only a sexual thing. As if that made it better. As if taking the most intimate part of our marriage and giving it to someone else for 2 years was somehow less of a betrayal because there weren't feelings involved. The sheer, illogical absurdity of it. You don't get it, I said, gently moving her hand away. It's not about the sex, it's about the 2 years of lying. It's about making me feel crazy. It's about every time you came home from him and got into bed with me. The sex was just the act. The lie was the relationship. The mask slipped, just for a second. The pleading eyes hardened, and I saw a flash of the old Chloe, the one who had called me bitter, but she quickly shuttered it, replacing it with fresh tears. So, that's it? She whispered, standing up, pulling the robe tight around her. You won't even try? You'd rather be alone and resentful than happy with me. I'd rather be alone than live another minute of my life as a prop in yours, I said, returning to my brief. Close the door on your way out. She stood there for a long moment, staring at me. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. I heard the bedroom door slam upstairs. The performance was over for the night. The next day, my lawyer, Diana, called. "Just a heads up," she said. "Your wife's lawyer is trying to introduce evidence of a good faith effort at reconciliation. They're claiming you're being unreasonable and emotionally abusive by refusing to engage." "Of course they are," I said, rubbing my eyes. "She claims she's been trying to work on the marriage, that she's been physically intimate with you as a show of commitment and you've rebuffed her cruelly." I almost laughed. "She came on to me last night. It was a setup. She wanted to be able to say that." "Exactly," Diana said. "It's a common tactic. They try to manufacture evidence of their own good intent. Don't worry, it doesn't hold water against a 2-year pattern of infidelity, but it shows you what you're dealing with. What I was dealing with was a woman who saw our entire relationship as a game to be won. She didn't want me. She wanted to win. She wanted to control the narrative, to be the wronged party in the end."
The next move in Chloe's game was marriage counseling. She suggested it through her lawyer, presenting it as a final desperate attempt to save our union. My lawyer advised against it, but I agreed. Not because I thought it would work, but because I wanted to see it. I wanted to see the dynamic play out in a room with a neutral third party. I wanted to watch her try to gaslight a professional. Dr. Angeli was a calm, middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Her office was all beige and soft lighting, designed for maximum emotional safety. For our first session, Chloe and I sat on opposite ends of a plush sofa, a chasm of leather and cushions between us. Chloe went first. She was brilliant. She talked about feeling neglected, about my long work hours, about how she felt she'd lost herself in the marriage. She talked about the affair as a symptom of a deeper disconnect. She cried. She took responsibility, sort of, using words like, "my poor choices," and "my weakness." It was a masterful performance, designed to elicit sympathy. Dr. Angeli listened, nodding, then turned to me. "And how does that make you feel, hearing her perspective?" I took a deep breath. "It makes me feel like I'm listening to a book report about a marriage I don't recognize," I said. "She's talking about feeling disconnected for the last 2 years. I'm talking about the last 2 years of being systematically lied to. She's talking about her poor choices. I'm talking about 730 days of active, calculated deception." Chloe's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to be honest here. I'm trying to take accountability." "You're trying to contextualize," I shot back. "You're trying to find a reason for it that isn't just, 'I wanted to and I didn't care about the consequences.' You're trying to make it my fault for not noticing you were unhappy, instead of your fault for not using your words like a goddamn adult and telling me." Dr. Angeli held up a gentle hand. "Let's stay in I feel statements. David, can you tell Chloe how her actions made you feel without assigning blame?" "Fine," I said, turning to Chloe. "When you lied to me for 2 years, it made me feel insane. When you told me I was paranoid for questioning receipts and late nights, it made me question my own grip on reality. When I found out the truth, it made me feel like the last 7 years of my life were a lie. And now, when you sit here and frame this as a marital disconnect and a symptom, it makes me feel like you still don't understand that what you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A choice you made thousands of times, every single day, for 2 years." Chloe's eyes welled up. "I do understand," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." But Dr. Angeli was looking at Chloe now, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Chloe, David mentions a 2-year timeline. Can you help me understand that? Often, when we talk about affairs as a symptom, they are shorter, a reaction to a specific crisis. A 2-year affair is a significant investment of time and emotional energy. It suggests a parallel relationship, not just a reaction." I saw the flicker of panic in Chloe's eyes. The counselor wasn't playing along. She was listening to logical reason. Chloe stammered. I was scared. I was confused. I didn't know how to get out. It just happened. And then it kept happening. Things like this don't just keep happening for 2 years without a lot of active effort to maintain them," Dr. Angeli said, her voice still calm, but the words were a scalpel. "Secrets, lies, scheduling. That takes a tremendous amount of energy. It's not a passive act." Chloe was floundering. The narrative she'd so carefully constructed was being dismantled. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me, but fear of losing control of the story. The session ended shortly after. As we walked out to the parking lot, Chloe turned on me, her voice a low, furious hiss. "Thanks for that. You just had to make me look like the monster, didn't you? You just had to twist everything." "I didn't twist anything," I said, unlocking my car. "I just told the truth. You should try it sometime. It's actually a lot less work."
The counseling sessions continued for a few more weeks, but they were pointless. Dr. Angeli saw through Chloe's performance, and Chloe knew it. She started refusing to attend, claiming the counselor was biased and taking your side. She went back to the old playbook. Texts filled with venom one day, and pleas for a second chance the next. Meanwhile, Maya and I kept talking. Our coffee meetings became more frequent. We'd talk about our days, about movies, about the fucked up nature of the people who had wronged us. It was easy. Uncomplicated. One evening, we went for a hike in Griffith Park. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of gold and pink. We stopped at an overlook, catching our breath. "I have to tell you something," I said, leaning on the railing. "Chloe's lawyer is trying to paint me as the bad guy. They're saying I'm being unreasonable, that I'm not giving her a chance. And my friends, some of them are starting to believe it. They think I'm evil for not forgiving her." Maya looked at me, her expression unreadable. "And why isn't she concerned about being evil for having an affair for 2 years? "Exactly," I laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "It's like they've all read the same script. People make mistakes. She's only human. You have to try to forgive." "People do make mistakes," Maya said. "But a mistake is, it happened, and I came forward with it the next morning. Not this. Not a secret life." She shook her head. "You know what my favorite part is? The hypocrisy. She's furious at me for talking to you. She's told a bunch of people that you're probably just having a revenge affair with me, that I'm just the other woman, trying to steal you from her." The irony was so thick you could choke on it. "The other woman," I repeated. "She's projecting hard." "She's terrified," Maya said, turning to face me. "She's terrified because she thinks I'm younger, prettier, and I'm not a cheater. She's not fighting for you because she loves you. She's fighting for you because she can't stand the idea of another woman winning you. If I was ugly, she wouldn't give a shit." Maya's words hit me like a bolt of lightning. It was so obvious. Chloe's desperation had nothing to do with me. It was about her ego. She'd traded me in for a newer model, a sexual thrill. And now that the new model was gone and I was moving on, her prize, the faithful, devoted husband, was being claimed by someone else. The ultimate insult. "You're not the other woman," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "You're the first woman in a long time who's made me feel like I'm not crazy." Maya smiled, a real smile, not the tight, sarcastic ones she usually wore. "Likewise." We stood there in silence for a moment, watching the city lights flicker on below. It wasn't a grand, romantic gesture. It was something quieter and more profound. A recognition, a connection built on the ruins of other people's lies. When I got home that night, I had a text from Chloe. "I heard you were at Griffith Park with your new girlfriend. Nice. Real classy. You couldn't even wait for the divorce to be final. You're just as bad as I am." I didn't respond, but I thought about it. Was I? Was talking to someone, finding solace in a kindred spirit, the same as fucking someone else for 2 years? The very question was an insult. I texted Maya. "According to Chloe, you're now my girlfriend, just a heads up." Her reply came instantly. Should I start acting jealous and possessive, or is that more her style? I laughed out loud. It was the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. The divorce proceedings churned on, a slow, expensive machine designed to bleed you dry. Chloe, through her lawyer, fought over everything. A set of antique lamps her grandmother had given us, a painting we'd bought on our honeymoon. She didn't want the things. She wanted to make it hurt. The smear campaign intensified. I heard from mutual friends that she was telling people I'd been emotionally abusive for years, that I'd isolated her from her friends, that my coldness had driven her into another man's arms. She painted a picture of a long-suffering wife, trapped in a gilded cage with a monster, who finally found a brief respite in the arms of a kind, understanding man. I was the villain in her story. The bitter, resentful husband who refused to let her be happy. One Saturday, I was at the house, packing up the last of my books. I was moving into a new apartment in Silver Lake. Clean slate. The doorbell rang. It was our neighbor Linda, an older woman who had always been friendly with Chloe. She had a casserole dish in her hands. "Oh, David," she said, her face a mask of pity. "I'm so sorry about everything. Chloe told me you were moving out. I just wanted to bring you this. For the road." "That's very kind, Linda, thank you." I took the dish. It was heavy, still warm. "She's just devastated, you know," Linda continued, lowering her voice. "She told me about the new woman. I know it's hard, but try not to be too angry with her. These things happen. People make mistakes, and you have to admit, you did work an awful lot." I felt the familiar rage bubble up, but I pushed it down. "Thank you for the casserole, Linda. I appreciate it." I closed the door and stood in the foyer, holding the warm dish. The gaslighting wasn't just for me anymore, it was for the whole world. She had rewritten history so thoroughly that I was now the villain who had driven his poor, fragile wife to infidelity and was now callously moving on with a younger woman while she wept at home. I thought about all of it, the 2 years of lies, the only sexual affair, the attempted reconciliation sex, the biased counselor, the smear campaign, the sheer breathtaking audacity of it all. She had done the thing, and she had made me the bad guy for reacting to it. I put the casserole in the fridge. I wasn't going to eat it. But I kept it there, a testament to the alternate reality she was building. That night, I called Maya. "Can I ask you a weird favor?" "Sure. Can we take a picture together? Nothing crazy. Just a selfie. At a restaurant or something. Maybe with a timestamp." There was a pause, and then a low chuckle. "You want to give her something to really cry about, don't you?" "No," I said. "I want to control the narrative. She's telling everyone I moved on before the divorce was final. She's telling them I was probably cheating on her with you for months. If that's the story she's telling, why not give her the proof? The truth won't matter to her people. They already believe her. But for the people who are on the fence, a picture of me smiling with another woman a month after I caught her in a hotel room, that doesn't look like a long-term affair. That looks like a man who was finally free." Maya laughed, a real, delighted laugh. "You're learning. I'm in. Where are we going for this incriminating photo op?" We went to a little wine bar in Los Feliz, low lighting, good music, crowded enough to have witnesses. We took a few selfies, smiling, our heads close together, just two friends having a nice time. I posted one to my Instagram story with the caption, "Good company, good wine, good night." I made sure my location was visible. The reaction was immediate and predictable. My phone started buzzing within minutes. A text from a mutual friend. "Dude, is that the new girl? You move fast." Another. "Chloe is losing her shit right now. Just FYI." I didn't respond to any of them. I just let the story sit there, a small, public counterpoint to the private narrative she was weaving. The next day, I got a call from Diana. "Your wife's lawyer just sent over a new filing. They're amending their claim to include marital misconduct on your part. They're alleging you were engaged in an extramarital affair with Amaya prior to the separation, citing your social media post as brazen evidence of a long-term relationship." I couldn't help it. I laughed, a deep, genuine laugh that came from my gut. The audacity, the sheer, stupid, magnificent audacity. "Diana," I said, still chuckling, "can you please send them in response the full timestamped GPS data from my car for the last 6 months, and my phone records, and the signed affidavit from Maya herself, stating that we met for the first time after the PI's investigation, and that our relationship is and always has been platonic." Diana was quiet for a moment, then she laughed too. "Oh, this is going to be fun. Their case just went up in flames. They've officially overplayed their hand." They had. By trying to paint me as the cheater, they had opened the door to discovery. My lawyer could now demand all of Chloe's communication records, further cementing the timeline of her affair and completely demolishing their claim of my infidelity. The smear campaign had backfired spectacularly. A few days later, the settlement offer came through. It was generous. In her lawyer's words, they wanted to avoid further costly litigation and the public embarrassment of a trial. Chloe had finally realized that the story she'd tried to tell wouldn't hold up in a court of law. The gaslighting worked on friends, on neighbors, on Linda with her casserole. But it didn't work on a judge. I signed the papers. It was over. 6 months later, I was in my new apartment in Silver Lake. It was smaller than the house, but it was mine. The walls were a deep, calming blue. My books were unpacked and organized on new shelves. The furniture was a mix of old favorites and new pieces I'd picked out myself. No ghosts here. Maya was on the couch, reading a script for work. We'd kept seeing each other, our friendship deepening into something more. It wasn't a frantic, desperate thing like my marriage had become. It was slow, steady, and built on a foundation of, not lying to each other. The mail slot clattered. I went to the front hall and picked up the small pile. Bills, a catalog, and a small white envelope with no return address. I opened it. Inside was a single plastic key card from the W Hotel. For a second, my heart stopped. A cold hand gripped it, but then I flipped it over. On the back, in her familiar looping handwriting, was a note. Thought you might want a souvenir, since you like collecting evidence so much. Hope you're happy with your new girlfriend. I hope she knows what a bitter, resentful person she's getting. You ruined my life. I hope you're proud. I stared at it for a long moment. The key card that had once felt like a live coal was just a piece of plastic now, a relic from another life. You okay? Maya's voice came from the living room. I walked back in, holding the card. Chloe sent me a little parting gift. Maya raised an eyebrow. I handed it to her. She read the note, and a slow smile spread across her face. Wow. She really doesn't get it, does she? No, I said, sitting down next to her. She never will. I thought about the last 2 years, the agony, the self-doubt, the rage, the slow, painful process of putting the pieces of myself back together. And I thought about Chloe's final message. You ruined my life. She was wrong. She had ruined her own life. All I did was refuse to let her ruin mine along with it. I was proud, not of the revenge, but of the survival, of finally seeing clearly, of walking away from a woman who would rather destroy me than admit she was wrong. I took the keycard from Maya and walked over to the kitchen. I opened the junk drawer, the one with the takeout menus, the spare batteries, the random screws. I tossed the card inside, next to an old box of birthday candles, a souvenir. From the fire I walked through and came out the other side. Hey, Maya said softly. You okay? I looked at her, at the warm light in the room, at the city lights twinkling outside the window, at the life that was mine, truly mine, for the first time in years. Yeah, I said, sitting back down beside her. I really am.
The last thing my father ever fixed was the lock on the front door. I remember because, for a week afterward, it fought me. Every time I came home, I had to lean into it, shoulder against the wood, a specific twist of the wrist that wasn't quite natural yet, a little dance I had to learn. That was my father's religion, fixing things. The garbage disposal that groaned like a dying animal, the kitchen table's chronic wobble that he solved with a folded matchbook, the hose bib that wept water no matter how many times you turned the handle. He was a man who believed every problem had a solution you could hold in your hands. Which is why the problem he left for me, the one with no moving parts, no leak to patch, no loose screw to tighten, felt like a violation of every natural law. I came home from my shift at the Whale's Tail, the used bookstore on Water Street, where I shelved classics for minimum wage and stole sips from the grown-up world. It was October in Port Townsend, Washington, which means the light goes golden and tired by 5, and the air smells like wood smoke from the neighbor's chimney, and the low-tide brine of the Sound. Our bungalow on Monroe Street sat quiet in that light, and I didn't think anything of it at first. My parents were early people, asleep by 9, up at 5:30, my father already brewing coffee before the paper hit the driveway. My younger brother, Leo, was probably in his room with his noise-canceling headphones, lost in some sprawling RPG where he could be a hero instead of a sophomore who still got picked last in gym. But the quiet wasn't the good kind. It was the kind that makes you stop walking to listen harder. An absence of energy. a house that felt like a stage after the actors have gone home. I dropped my canvas bag at the bottom of the stairs. Mom? Dad? The word dad hung in the air and died without echo. I walked into the kitchen. The sink was dry, spotless. The dish rack held nothing. The little magnetic whiteboard on the fridge, the one my mother used for her loopy, optimistic reminders, dotting her eyes with tiny circles, was wiped clean. Not just erased. Cleaned. A faint gray ghost smudge was the only evidence it had ever existed. That's when the cold started. Not in my stomach. In my fingertips first, then spreading inward, like I'd pressed my palms against winter glass. I ran upstairs. 3 steps at a time. My parents' room was pristine in that horrifying way hotel rooms are pristine. Bed made with military corners, closet door open, empty. Not just a few hangers askew, empty. No shoes on the floor, no suitcase on the top shelf. My mother's jewelry box, the cheap wooden one with the dancing ballerina that played a tinny version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, gone from her dresser. Leo's room was worse. His posters were still there, fantastical landscapes with impossible architecture, warriors with swords raised toward dragons, but his computer, his books, his clothes, his headphones, gone. The room was a museum exhibit of a life that had ended abruptly. A half-empty glass of water on his nightstand, a sock under his desk. Details so mundane they became obscene. I ended up back in the kitchen because I didn't know where else to go. My heart was doing something strange, hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat, my temples behind my eyes. That's when I saw it. On the kitchen table, where the cereal boxes usually lived, was a single sheet of lined paper, torn from a spiral notebook with that jagged top edge. The handwriting was my mother's. 2 sentences. Good luck, Nora, you figure it out. I read it once. The words made sounds in my head but refused to form meaning. I read it 10 times. 20 times. The letters didn't rearrange themselves into a hidden message. They didn't suddenly reveal a destination, a timeline, a reassurance. They just sat there, impossibly small on the page, 14 words that weighed more than the entire house. The note didn't say, "We're sorry." It didn't say, "We love you." It didn't say, "There was no other way." It was a command, a dismissal, a final exam I never studied for. I waited for the tears. They didn't come. What came instead was something I didn't have a name for yet. A cold, clean fury that started in my chest like a blade sliding between ribs. It felt like the only warm thing in my body. I was still holding the note when the sun went down. I was still holding it when the streetlights clicked on, casting their orange glow through the kitchen window. I was still holding it when I finally understood, with the clarity of a knife wound, that they weren't coming back. The lock on the front door was fixed. Too bad the family it was supposed to protect was gone. For the first 3 months, figuring it out meant learning to exist in the negative space where a family used to be. The landlord, a beefy man named Gary with a mustache that belonged on a 1970s cop, was surprisingly human. He stood in my living room, still smelling like them, still holding their ghosts in every corner, and read the note I handed him. He read it twice. Then he looked at me, 17 years old in my bookstore hoodie, and said, "Shit, kid." He let me break the lease without penalty. That was the first kindness a stranger ever showed me, and I stored it away like emergency rations. My boss at the Whale's Tail, Sarah, was the second. Sarah had silver hair she kept in a long braid and a backbone forged in the feminist wars of the 1970s. She'd marched for the ERA, ran a women's bookstore in Portland for 15 years before the chains killed it, and had zero tolerance for self-pity. When I showed up for my shift the next day, because where else was I supposed to go? She took one look at my face and pulled me into the back room. "Start talking," she said. No softness, just a command. I told her. The words came out flat, monotone, like I was reading someone else's police report. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You're going to stay on my couch until we figure out something better. Don't argue. I have a pullout and I make decent scrambled eggs. That's the deal." I stayed for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of listening to Sarah's cat, a fat orange bastard named Dickens, purr like a lawnmower at the foot of the pullout. 3 weeks of Sarah's scrambled eggs. She was right. They were decent. And her pointed silences that somehow felt more supportive than anyone else's pity. During those weeks, I learned the bureaucracy of abandonment. The social workers with their soft voices and harder eyes, asking questions designed to determine if I was a victim or just collateral damage. the court-appointed advocate who smelled like cigarettes and spoke to me like I was slightly stupid. The emancipation hearing where I had to sit in a wooden chair that was too big for me and explain in front of a judge that my parents had evaluated my worth and found it wanting. The judge was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain and a face that gave nothing away. She asked me 3 questions. Was I currently employed? Did I have a place to live? Did I understand what I was asking for? Yes. 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 She signed the papers without looking up. Emancipation granted. Best of luck to you, Miss Cole. Congratulations, Nora. You're an adult. Now what? I finished high school while living in a studio apartment above a garage in Port Townsend's less charming neighborhood. The apartment was 300 square feet of desperate efficiency, a hot plate, a mini fridge that shuddered like it had a fever, a bathroom so small you could shower and use the toilet at the same time if you were creative. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's arguments, his girlfriends crying, the eventual slam of the door when she left for good. I worked double shifts at the Salty Salmon, a diner where the coffee was bottomless and the tips were not. I learned to balance 3 plates on one arm, to smile at customers who grabbed my wrist a second too long, to calculate tips in my head while wiping down counters at 2 a.m. I learned that men who leave generous tips often want something in return, and men who leave nothing at all want you to know you're invisible. I learned that being invisible had advantages. The University of Washington accepted me on a financial aid package I pieced together like a quilt made of scraps. Pell Grants, work study, a scholarship for first-generation students that I technically qualified for, because my parents had effectively erased themselves from my existence. I moved to Seattle with 2 suitcases and $700 I'd saved in a coffee can under my bed. That's where I met Sam. Sam was in my freshman composition class. He sat 2 rows ahead and slightly to the left, close enough that I could see the way his hair curled at the nape of his neck, far enough that I could pretend I wasn't watching. He had a smile that was both lopsided and entirely sincere, like he knew a joke he was willing to share. He raised his hand too much, made the professor laugh, and took notes in a messy scrawl that I could read from where I sat, because I'd gotten very good at reading people upside down. The first time he spoke to me was after class. We were both heading for the door, and he stepped aside to let me pass, then said, "You're the one who never talks." It wasn't a question. I stopped. I talk. You take notes like you're documenting a crime scene, intense focus, no wasted movement. I'm Sam. He held out his hand. I looked at it. I looked at him. I took it. His grip was firm but not aggressive, the kind of handshake that said I'm not trying to prove anything. Nora. I know. Professor called on you yesterday and you said, I don't have an opinion, and he looked personally wounded. Sam grinned. I've never seen anyone shut him down so efficiently. I was impressed. That was the beginning. Not romantic, not yet. Just 2 people who recognized something in each other. For me, it was his refusal to perform. For him, I'd learn later, it was my refusal to pretend. Sam didn't pry. That was the miracle of him. He just showed up. He'd save me a seat, bring me coffee from the cart when he saw me pulling all-nighters in the library, and never flinched at my sharp edges. When I snapped at him for asking where I was from, he just nodded and said, "Okay, not a question we ask. Got it." And he meant it. The first time I told him about my parents, we were sitting on the hood of his beat-up Civic, looking out at the lights of Seattle reflected in the dark water of Elliott Bay. It was 3 a.m. We'd been studying for finals, and somehow the conversation had drifted to families, to childhood, to the spaces between. I told him the story in the same flat voice I'd used with Sarah 3 years earlier. The note, the empty house, the emancipation, the diner, the studio apartment. I waited for the pity, the awkward silence, the words everyone used. I can't imagine. That's terrible. You're so strong. He was quiet for a long time. The water lapped against the pylons below us. A ferry moved slowly across the bay, its lights reflected in long streaks. Then he said, "So you've been taking care of yourself since you were 17. That's fucking incredible." He paused. "And that's fucking terrible. Both things can be true." He put his arm around me, a simple, solid weight. No squeezing, no pulling me closer, just presence. "You're not alone anymore, Cole," he said, "just so you know." It was the first time since I found that note that I felt something other than cold fury or grinding anxiety. It felt like warmth, like a tether to something solid in a world that had taught me everything solid could disappear overnight. Therapy came later, after graduation. After I'd clawed my way up from junior copywriter at a third-rate ad agency to senior strategist at a firm that actually paid me what I was worth. On paper, I was a success. I had a loft in Belltown with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. I had a closet full of clothes that fit perfectly because I'd finally stopped buying things on sale and started buying things that made me feel powerful. I had a reputation for being the person clients called when they needed a brand that didn't just look good but felt inevitable. But the fury was still there. It lived in my chest like a second heart, beating to its own rhythm. It was in the way I never let anyone pay for my dinner, ever, even when they insisted. It was in the way I triple-checked every contract for hidden clauses, every email for subtext, every kind gesture for the hook hidden underneath. It was in the way a simple question like, "Where are your parents from?" could make my jaw clench so hard my molars ached. Sam noticed. Of course he noticed. He noticed everything. "I'm not saying you're broken, Cole," he said one night lying in my bed, the city lights painting stripes across his bare chest. "I'm saying you're carrying something really heavy, and you've been carrying it for a really long time, and maybe, you could put it down for an hour a week and see what that feels like. I don't need to pay someone to listen to me complain. It's not complaining, it's..." He searched for the word. "Unpacking. You're the most organized person I know. You have a system for everything, but you've never had a system for this. Let someone help you build one." He found Dr. Mystery. Of course he did. He researched therapists who specialized in complex family trauma, read reviews, checked credentials, and presented me with a shortlist like he was pitching a client on a marketing strategy. That was Sam's love language: solving problems, removing obstacles, making the impossible possible. Dr. Mystery was a small woman in her 50s with a quiet voice and eyes that seemed to see right through my carefully constructed facade. Her office was in a converted house in Capitol Hill, with windows that looked out on a garden I never saw her tend. She wore cardigans in colors that didn't exist in nature: soft lavender, muted coral, a green that reminded me of sea glass. For the first 6 months, I paid her to sit in silence while I talked about work, about Sam, about the weather. I deflected every question about my past with the precision of a martial artist. I thought I was winning. Then one day she said, "You've built a fortress, Nora. It's impressive. The walls are high, the moat is deep, and I'm quite sure you have archers stationed at every turret." I almost laughed. Almost. "But fortresses are for keeping people out," she continued. "What would it feel like to open the gate just a crack for yourself?" I didn't have an answer. For the first time in a long time, I didn't even have a deflection. The work that followed was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Harder than the diner, harder than the studio apartment, harder than the emancipation hearing, because this work required me to stop fighting and start feeling, to sit with the 17-year-old girl who stood in an empty kitchen holding a note, and to tell her finally that it wasn't her fault. "She did what she had to do," Dr. Mystery said one afternoon, referring to that girl. "She survived. She built walls. She kept you safe. But you're not her anymore. You get to decide what comes next." It took another year to understand that the fury wasn't just at my parents. It was at the scared, abandoned girl I'd been, the one who had to figure it out alone, the one who learned that love could disappear overnight without explanation. My real family, the one I chose, was Sam, who knew when to make me laugh and when to just hold my hand. It was his parents, Linda and David, who welcomed me into their chaotic, loving home for Thanksgivings without question, who never asked why I didn't have anywhere else to go, who just made a place for me at their table. It was Dr. Mystery who helped me see that the girl in the kitchen wasn't weak. She was the one who started building the fortress, and I was the one who got to decide who lived in it now. The email arrived on a Tuesday at 3:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was in the middle of a creative review for a client, a sustainable activewear company called Vert, run by women who actually gave a shit about their supply chain. The mood board was perfect: organic textures, earthy tones, models with real bodies and unretouched skin. I was feeling good, the way you feel when work clicks, when the thing in your head becomes the thing on the screen. Then my laptop chimed. A new message. The subject line was a name I hadn't spoken aloud in 15 years. Mom. My body reacted before my brain could catch up. My heart didn't just skip, it stopped. A full second of absolute silence, then slammed back to life so hard I felt it in my temples. My hand froze over the trackpad, fingers curled like a claw. The air in my office went thin, like someone had sucked half of it out through the vents. I thought about deleting it. I really did. I thought about the satisfaction of dragging that subject line to the trash, of clicking delete forever, and watching 15 years of silence answered with more silence. But the ghost in the foundation was awake now. It rattled its chains. It wanted to see. I opened it. Nora, I know this is a shock. Your father and I have thought about this day for a long time. We're getting older, your father's health isn't what it used to be, and we want to see you. To explain. To try to make you understand what happened and why. We're living in Spokane now. We've been here for 8 years. Your father retired from construction, and I've been working part-time at a church daycare. We have a little house, a golden retriever named Bailey. It's a quiet life. We have a lot we want to say. Things we should have said a long time ago. Please, just give us a chance to be your parents again. Love, Mom. The woman who left me with a 2-sentence eviction notice. The woman who let 15 years pass. 15 years of birthdays, of Christmases, of nights when I cried so hard I couldn't breathe, without a single phone call, a single letter, a single sign that she remembered I existed. That woman wanted a chance to be my parent again. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I read it again, and again. Each time, the fury rose higher, hotter, until I could taste it at the back of my throat like copper. But underneath the fury, something else stirred. Something colder, sharper. The thing that had made me good at my job, good at reading people, good at finding the hidden story beneath the surface story. What was the story here? Why now? What did they want? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the screen, and felt the carefully calibrated surface of my life ripple like water just before something breaks through from below. That night I sat on my balcony, the city glittering below me like a fallen constellation, and told Sam. He'd come over after work, as he did most nights, with Thai food and the easy comfort of a man who'd been in my life for a decade. He knew something was wrong the moment he walked in. I could see it in the way his smile faded, the way his eyes went sharp with concern. What happened? I handed him my laptop. He read the email standing up, his face going through a sequence of micro-expressions I'd learned to read over the years. Surprise, then anger, then a carefully controlled neutrality that meant he was processing. When he finished, he set the laptop down carefully, like it might explode. Then he sat across from me and said, "What are you gonna do?" "I don't know yet." "Yes, you do." He wasn't challenging me, he was stating a fact. You always know, you just haven't admitted it to yourself yet. I looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, millions of people were living their lives, unaware that mine had just been cracked open. "I'm not that girl anymore," I said. "The one who would fall apart if they showed up. I'm not going to react. I'm going to act." Sam nodded slowly. "Okay. Then let's think this through. What do you need to know before you decide anything?" That was Sam. Always moving forward, always practical, always on my side without trying to take over. He'd learned long ago that I didn't need a savior. I needed a partner. "I need to know who they are now," I said. "What their life looks like. Whether this is genuine or whether something's wrong. Whether they've even told Leo." "Do you want me to—" "No, I've got someone." The PI I hired was a woman named Detective Carla Mendez, retired from SPD, now running her own small agency. I'd used her for background checks on potential business partners before. She was thorough, discreet, and priced fairly. She didn't ask why I needed the info. She just asked for names, dates, and a retainer. 3 days later, her report landed in my encrypted inbox. It was thorough, clinical. My parents, David and Margaret Cole, ages 68 and 64 respectively, lived in a ranch-style house in the Spokane Valley, purchased 8 years ago for $215,000. My father had retired from a construction company, where he'd worked as a foreman for 12 years. My mother worked 3 days a week at a church daycare, earning minimum wage plus the satisfaction of serving the Lord, according to a quote in a church newsletter Carla had dug up. They had a golden retriever named Bailey, registered with the county, licensed and vaccinated. They attended Spokane Valley Evangelical Church every Sunday. They volunteered at the church's food bank on Wednesdays. According to neighbors' social media accounts, Carla had done some creative digging. They were such a sweet couple, always willing to help, a blessing to the community. They had no contact with any known relatives, no mention of children in any church publications, No photos of Leo or me on any visible surfaces in the few photos Carla had obtained from real estate listings and neighbors' posts. They looked from the outside like a perfectly normal aging couple. The kind you'd see at a church potluck and think, they seem nice. I wonder what their story is. Their story was that they'd abandoned their children and then built a new life where no one knew. The report also included something I hadn't asked for but couldn't stop reading. A photo of my father taken 6 months ago, outside a medical building. Carla's note explained, subject David Cole was observed leaving the Spokane Cancer Center after a scheduled appointment. Further investigation revealed a diagnosis of stage 3 pancreatic cancer, currently in treatment. Pancreatic cancer, the kind that kills you slowly or quickly, but always kills you. They're getting older, your father's health isn't what it used to be. Understatement of the century. I closed the file and sat in the dark for a long time. The city lights flickered and hummed. Somewhere a siren wailed and faded. So that was it. My father was dying, and my mother wanted to clear her conscience before it was too late. They weren't reaching out because they'd done the work, because they'd changed, because they finally understood what they'd done. They were reaching out because death was knocking and they wanted absolution on their terms. The fury in my chest went very, very quiet, and something else took its place. Something that felt almost like clarity. I called Dr. Mystery the next morning. Not for an emergency session, I was past that, but for a consultation. A strategy session like I was planning a campaign. I need to think through what I want from them, I said. Not what I deserve. What I actually need. She was quiet for a moment, the way she always was when she was considering something carefully. Those are often different things, Nora. What do you deserve? An apology. Accountability. 15 years of child support. Take your pick. And what do you need? I thought about it. Really thought about it. The way I'd think about a client's brand positioning. What was the core message? What was the desired outcome? I need them to see, I said finally. Not just to say the words, to really see what they did, to sit in it, to understand that the girl they left behind isn't waiting for them. She's gone. I'm here now, and I'm whole. I'm more than whole. I'm successful and loved and functional, and it had nothing to do with them. So, your reply isn't a question, Dr. Mystery said. It's a statement. You set the terms, you control the frame. Exactly. Then write it like you would a client email. Professional, clear, no emotional labor on your part. Let them sit with the silence between your words. I did. I made them wait a month. A full month of sitting with their email, wondering if I'd reply. A month of checking their inbox, refreshing, hoping. A month of the silence they'd taught me so well. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the uncertainty I'd felt. The desperate waiting I'd done for weeks after they left, sleeping on Sarah's couch, listening for a key in the lock that never turned. The way I'd checked the mailbox every day for a letter, a postcard, anything. The way I'd eventually stopped checking because hope was too expensive. A month. When I finally wrote back, my tone was pure business. No warmth, no anger, just facts. Mom, I'm available for a conversation on Saturday the 24th at 2 p.m. It will be at my residence in Seattle. I will send the address. Please confirm if this time works. Attached is a parking pass for my building. Please use the visitor spaces on level P2. Nora, no love. No salutations. Just a time, a date, and logistical instructions, as if I were scheduling a vendor meeting. They confirmed within the hour. The morning of the 24th, I woke at 5:47 a.m. and couldn't fall back asleep. Not from anxiety, I'd done the work, I was ready, but from a strange humming alertness, like an athlete before a competition, like a warrior before battle. Sam made coffee without being asked. He'd stayed over because of course he had, and he moved through my kitchen with the ease of someone who'd been doing it for years. He knew where I kept the mugs, which drawer had the good spoons, how I took my coffee, black, no sugar, in the blue ceramic mug his mother had given me 3 Christmases ago. You're going to be fine, he said, handing me the mug. You're the most prepared person I know. You've been preparing for this your whole life. I'm not preparing for anything, I'm just showing up. Exactly, that's the power move. You don't need anything from them. You're not asking for anything. They're the ones who showed up empty-handed, asking for something they haven't earned. I sipped my coffee and watched the sun rise over the city, pink and gold, bleeding into blue. A new day. At 1:55, I watched from my window as a silver sedan pulled into the visitor parking. I saw my mother get out first. She was smaller than I remembered, fragile almost, her hair a brittle gray cut short and practical. She wore a floral blouse and khakis, the uniform of a Midwestern grandmother. She looked around at my building, at the other luxury towers rising around it, at the concierge desk visible through the glass lobby doors. My father followed, slower. He moved like a man carrying something heavy, the cancer probably, or the weight of what he was about to face. His shoulders were stooped, his face thinner than the photos Carla had found. He wore a button-down shirt tucked into jeans, an outfit that looked like my mother had picked it out for him. They looked ordinary, diminished. It was the most disorienting part of the whole thing. The monsters in my memory were larger than life, towering figures who had the power to destroy my world with a single note. These were just two old people, clutching a fruit basket like a shield, looking lost in the shadow of my building. I let the doorbell ring 3 times before I buzzed them up. A small power move, but a deliberate one. I'm not waiting by the door for you. I never will again. When I opened my apartment door, the smell of them hit me first. A faint, familiar scent, my mother's drugstore perfume, lavender and something powdery. My father's Old Spice, the same deodorant he'd used my whole life. It was like a punch to the solar plexus. For a split second I was 17 again, standing in that empty kitchen. Then I blinked, and I was here. In my home. In my life. And they were the visitors. My mother's face crumpled. Her eyes welled instantly, tears spilling over before she'd even said a word. "Oh, Nora," she whispered. "My baby." The words hung in the air between us. My baby. As if 15 years of silence could be erased by 2 words and some tears. I didn't move. I didn't offer a hug. I didn't soften my face. I just looked at them, my expression pleasant and empty, the way you'd look at strangers who'd knocked on your door by mistake. "Come in." They stepped inside, and I watched them take it in. My living room was designed to impress. The exposed brick, the original art, the floor-to-ceiling windows with their unobstructed view of the sound. The furniture was all clean lines and expensive fabrics, chosen by a decorator I'd hired when I realized I had more money than taste. It was a room that screamed success, stability, and the kind of money that doesn't worry about money. My mother's eyes were wide, darting from object to object, calculating. My father just looked uncomfortable, like he'd sat on something sharp. "Please, sit," I said, gesturing to the couch. I remained standing. They sat awkwardly, side by side, the fruit basket between them on the coffee table. My mother clutched her purse in her lap. My father stared at his hands. For a long moment no one spoke. I let the silence stretch, let it become uncomfortable, let them feel the weight of it. Finally, my mother launched into the speech she'd clearly rehearsed. It came out in a rush, a torrent of words that tumbled over each other. "We know we don't deserve this. We know that. We've talked about it so many times, your father and I, about what we did, about how wrong it was. We were young, Nora, and we were scared. We'd made so many mistakes, we were in so much debt, and we just panicked. We thought you'd be better off without us dragging you down. We thought you'd find a way. You were always so capable, so strong, and we always planned to come back. We did, we just kept putting it off, and then more time passed, and it got harder, and we didn't know how. But we thought about you every single day. Every day. We love you. We never stopped loving you. We were just too broken to know how to show it." My father nodded along, adding gruff confirmations at the appropriate moments. "Your mother's right. It was a terrible thing. The biggest mistake of our lives." I let them talk. I listened to every word, cataloging each excuse, each self-justification, each attempt to frame their abandonment as a misguided act of love. I watched their faces, their body language, the way my mother's eyes darted to mine and away, the way my father's hands clenched and unclenched on his thighs. When the torrent finally slowed to a trickle, the silence that followed was absolute. Heavy. Expectant. My mother looked at me with hopeful, tear-stained eyes, waiting for the forgiveness she'd come to collect. "So," I said. My voice was calm, clear, the voice I used in client presentations when I was about to deliver bad news. "You ran out on your 17-year-old daughter with a 2-sentence note. You left her to figure out eviction, emancipation, and survival entirely on her own. You missed 15 years of her life, every birthday, every Christmas, every moment she needed a mother or a father, And now, after all that time, you've decided you want to be my parents again." My mother flinched like I'd slapped her. "Nora, please, I held up a hand. She stopped mid-sentence. The gesture was small, but the power in it was absolute. In my world, when I held up my hand, people stopped talking. They listened. They waited for what I would say next. "I'm going to tell you a story now," I said. "It's about what I figured out." I told them everything. Not with anger. Anger would have been a gift, would have given them something to react against, to defend against. I told them with the cold, precise detail of an architect reviewing blueprints, of a strategist presenting a case study. I told them about coming home to an empty house, about the note, about sleeping on Sarah's couch, listening to her cat purr, too numb to cry, about the emancipation hearing, the judge with her reading glasses on a chain, the words emancipation granted that made me an adult at 17. I told them about the studio apartment above the garage, the hot plate, the mini fridge that shuddered, the neighbors' fights, the salty salmon, the 4 a.m. shifts, the customers who grabbed my wrist and left nothing in return. I told them about the University of Washington, the financial aid package I pieced together, the scholarships I fought for, the all-nighters in the library, alone, because I didn't have anyone to call when I was scared. I told them about Sam, about meeting him in composition class, about the way he saved me seats and brought me coffee and never flinched at my sharp edges. About the night on the hood of his Civic when I finally told someone the truth, and he said, "You're not alone anymore." I told them about Sam's parents, Linda and David, who welcomed me into their home for Thanksgivings, without ever asking why I didn't have anywhere else to go. Who gave me a place at their table and never made me feel like a guest. I told them about Dr. Mystery, about the years of therapy, the walls I'd built, the work it took to finally open the gate just a crack for myself. I told them about the panic attacks that plagued me for years, the sudden, crushing certainty that everyone I loved would disappear without warning, the inability to trust kindness without looking for the hook hidden underneath, the relentless drive that came not from ambition, but from fear, from the deep conviction that if I stopped moving, I would drown. I told them about building a career from nothing, about the nights I spent learning the business, the weekends I worked while my colleagues took breaks, the reputation I'd earned for being brilliant and ruthless and untouchable. I told them about the fortress I'd built, stone by stone, with my own hands. And I let them see the scars on those hands. When I finished, the room was silent, except for my mother's quiet sobbing. She'd cried through most of it, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking. My father stared at the floor, his face pale, his jaw working like he was chewing something bitter. The fruit basket sat on my coffee table, a pathetic offering, a symbol of how little they understood. You can't show up after 15 years with a fruit basket and expect it to mean anything. "So you see," I concluded, "your question isn't really a question. You don't get to just show up and ask to be my parents again. That position was filled a long time ago. By other people. By me. By the life I built without you." My mother looked up, her face a wreck of grief. Mascara streaked her cheeks. Her eyes were red, swollen. "But we're your family," she whispered. "We made a terrible mistake. We know that. But can't you forgive us? Can't we try to be a family again?" I looked at her, this stranger wearing my mother's face. The fury was still there, but it was quiet now. A distant hum, no longer the dominant frequency. Mostly, I just felt tired and free. "Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip," I said. "It's not something you ask for and receive, like a package in the mail. It's a byproduct. It's what's left after the person who hurt you has done the work to understand the damage and proven they're different. So tell me, what work have you done? Not just feeling sorry, not just regretting. What actual work have you done in the last 15 years to become people who deserve to be in my life?" The silence stretched. My mother opened her mouth, closed it, looked at my father. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'll wait," I said. They had no answer. Because there was no answer. They'd spent 15 years building a new life, a quiet life, a life where they were the sweet old couple at church with the golden retriever. They'd spent 15 years not doing the work, and now, with death approaching, they wanted me to do it for them. My father finally spoke. His voice was rough, thinner than I remembered. "We can't change the past, Nora. We can only try to do better in the future." "Then go do better," I said. "Somewhere else, with someone else. The future you're offering isn't mine to give." I didn't see them again. I walked them to the elevator. My mother tried to hug me at the door. She stepped forward, arms opening, face crumpled with need. I stepped back. The look on her face was something I'll never forget. A raw, dawning horror at the reality of what they'd done, at the chasm they'd created that no amount of tears or fruit baskets could ever bridge. It was the look of someone realizing finally that some things can't be unfucked. My father couldn't even look at me. He stared at the elevator doors, at the floor numbers ticking down, at anything but his daughter. As the doors slid shut, I saw him put a hand on my mother's arm. A gesture of comfort, of solidarity. They were two people, alone in a small metal box, carrying the weight of a choice they could never undo. I went back inside, sat on my couch, and cried for the first time in years. Not for them, for the girl I'd been, for the life I'd lived without them, for the strange, hollow relief of finally saying everything and having nothing change. Sam came out of the bedroom. He'd given us privacy, but he'd been there the whole time, waiting, and sat beside me. He didn't say anything. He just put his arm around me and let me cry. A week later, a letter arrived, handwritten, my mother's loopy handwriting, the same handwriting that had written, "Good luck, Nora. You figure it out." But the content was different. "Dear Nora, I've been trying to write this letter for 15 years. Every time I sat down to do it, I couldn't find the words. Now I know why. There are no words for what we did. There's no explanation that makes it right. There's no apology big enough. I'm not going to ask for your forgiveness again. I'm not going to ask for anything. I just want you to know that I see you now. I see the girl we left behind, and I see the woman she became. I see the strength it took to survive, and I know we had nothing to do with that strength. You built it yourself from nothing, because we gave you nothing. I think about the moments I missed. Your high school graduation. Did anyone cheer for you? Your first love? Did you have anyone to tell? Your first job? Your first apartment? Your first real success? I missed all of it. And the worst part is, I chose to miss it. Every day for 15 years, I chose not to call, not to write, not to find you. I told myself it was because I was ashamed, but that's just another excuse. The truth is, I was a coward. Your father's illness has made me face things I've been running from my whole life. It's made me realize that I'm going to die with this guilt, this weight, unless I do something with it. Not to make myself feel better, I don't deserve to feel better. But to tell you the truth finally, without asking for anything in return. I don't expect to hear from you. I don't deserve to. But if you ever want to know anything, about your father's side of the family, about your grandmother's recipes, about the stories I should have told you when you were growing up, I'm here. Not as your mother. I forfeited that right a long time ago. Just as someone who has information you might want someday. I'm so sorry, Nora. I know that's not enough. It will never be enough. But I'm sorry. Margaret. I read the letter 3 times. The first time, I was looking for the hook, the manipulation, the guilt trip, the hidden ask. The second time, I was looking for the honesty, trying to separate genuine insight from performance. The third time, I just read it as words on a page, a document from someone I used to know. It was the closest thing to accountability I'd ever gotten from her, and it changed nothing. Not really, but it confirmed everything. 3 years later, I'm sitting on the back deck of a house in West Seattle, watching Sam grill salmon while Linda, Sam's mom, my mother-in-law in everything but paperwork, chases our toddler daughter around the yard with a pair of inflatable water wings. "Come here, Evie, let Grandma put these on so you can splash." Evie shrieks with laughter and runs the other direction, her chubby legs pumping, her curls bouncing. She's 2 years old, stubborn as a mule, and absolutely convinced that water wings are an unnecessary restriction on her personal freedom. I have no idea where she gets that independent streak. David, Sam's dad, is dozing in a lawn chair, a beer balanced on his belly, the Seattle summer sun warming his face. He's the kind of man who can fall asleep anywhere, anytime, and wake up refreshed and ready to help with whatever needs doing. When Evie was born, he drove to the hospital at 3 a.m. and sat in the waiting room for 6 hours, just in case we needed anything. Linda finally catches Evie and wrestles the water wings onto her flailing arms while Evie yells, "No, Grandma, no," at the top of her lungs. Linda just laughs, scoops her up, and blows a raspberry on her belly. Evie's outrage dissolves into giggles. Sam catches my eye from the grill and grins. He knows what I'm thinking. He always knows. This is my family, not the one I was born into, the one I chose, the one that chose me back. My phone buzzes on the deck table. I glance at it. A friend request on Facebook from a name I recognize, Leo Cole. My brother. His profile picture shows a man in his early 30s, smiling, with a woman and 2 kids at what looks like a state fair. They're eating cotton candy, all of them with blue tongues, laughing at the camera. He looks happy. He looks like a stranger. I've thought about Leo over the years, wondered if he remembered me, if he ever asked about me, if he felt the same hollow ache I did. I've Googled him, found bits and pieces. He lives in Oregon now, works in IT, got married 7 years ago. He has 2 daughters. He volunteers at a local animal shelter. I haven't reached out. I don't know if he even knows our parents tried to contact me. I don't know if he's done his own work, his own therapy, his own reckoning with what happened. I don't know if he'd want to hear from me, or if I'd just be reopening wounds he spent years learning to live with. I stare at the friend request for a long moment. My thumb hovers over the screen. Accept or ignore? Everything okay? Sam's voice. He's come up behind me, spatula in hand, salmon scent clinging to his shirt. I hold up the phone. He reads the screen, looks at me. What do you want to do? The question I've been asking myself for 15 years. What do I want? Not what's expected. Not what's fair. What do I want? I don't know yet, I say. And for once, it's the truth. Not a deflection. Just an honest acknowledgement that some questions don't have immediate answers. Sam nods. Then don't decide now. Let it sit. You can always accept later. You can always ignore later. It's your timeline. He goes back to the grill. I put the phone down, screen side down, and watch my daughter chase a butterfly across the grass, Linda close behind her, ready to catch her if she falls. I think about my parents sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. I wonder if they look at the phone, willing it to ring. I wonder if they understand that some silences aren't voids to be filled, but monuments. And theirs is a silence of their own making, built on the foundation of a note left on a kitchen table 15 years ago. I wonder if my father is still alive. I haven't checked. I don't plan to. I wonder if my mother still works at the church daycare, still volunteers at the food bank, still takes Bailey for walks around the neighborhood where everyone thinks she's just a sweet old lady with a nice husband and a quiet life. I wonder if they ever talk about us, about Leo and me, about the children they left behind and the grandchildren they'll never meet. The salmon is ready. Linda has Evie wrapped in a towel, water wings defeated, ready for lunch. David wakes up, stretches, and starts setting the table without being asked. Sam brings the platter over, kisses my forehead, and sits down beside me. We eat. We laugh. We argue about whether Evie is too young for ice cream. Linda says yes. Sam says no. I say we'll see how lunch goes. The sun moves across the sky. The day unfolds in golden light and salt air, and the sound of people who love each other. This is what I figured out. This is what they'll never understand. Family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. It's about the lock on the door that you fix so it opens easily for the people you love. It's about never, ever leaving someone to face the dark alone. It's about choosing each other, every day, not because you have to, but because you can't imagine not choosing each other. They wanted me to figure it out, and I did. I figured out that the answer was never about them. It was always about me, about the life I built from the rubble, my life, whole, complete, and it is beautiful. I pick up my phone one last time before dinner. The friend request is still there, waiting. Leo's face, smiling under the fair lights. A question mark hanging in digital space. I don't accept. I don't ignore. I just look at it for a moment. This small connection to a past I've spent years learning to leave behind. Then I put the phone away and reach for my daughter's sticky hand. The sun is setting over the sound. The water is gold and pink and endless. And I am exactly where I belong.
The envelope was heavy, not in weight, but in meaning. Thick, cream-colored linen paper, my full name, Alexander James Moreau, typed perfectly in the center. It sat on the worn oak of my kitchen table like a lit fuse. I'd been staring at it for 10 minutes, the smell of my cheap, instant coffee, doing nothing to cut through the tension. My grandfather, Elias Moreau, had died, 87 years old, a man who built a regional chain of hardware stores from a single cart he pushed through our town. He was the only person in my family who looked at me and didn't see a placeholder. He saw me. He taught me how to use a circular saw, how to negotiate a contract, and how to spot a liar by the way they wouldn't meet your eyes. He had eyes the color of a winter sky, and they missed nothing. My phone buzzed, a venomous little insect hum against the table. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. It was the third call since the funeral 2 days ago. I slid my thumb under the flap and tore it open. The paper inside was just as formal, the language of solicitors and last wishes. My eyes scanned the legal jargon, hunting for the heart of it. I stopped breathing. $250,000. It was freedom. It was the down payment on the small auto repair shop I'd been dreaming of for years, the one with the dirt floor and the for lease sign that was slowly rusting in the window. It was a life that wasn't just about scraping by. I read on, the words blurring. To my grandson, Matthew Thomas Moreau, I leave the sum of $250,000. $250,000. Good. Matt was my younger brother, my parents' sun, moon, and stars. He'd probably blow it on another failed crypto scheme or a car he'd total in 6 months, but that was his business. It was fair, equal, and the remainder of my estate, including the primary residence and all shares in Moreau Family Hardware, to be divided equally between my daughter, Patricia Ann Moreau, and my son-in-law, Richard Owen Moreau. That made sense, too. They'd been running the business for the last decade. They deserved it. It was clean. It was just. A small, hard knot of grief in my chest loosened slightly. He'd done right by me. For the first time in my life, it felt like my family had too. I called my dad to share the news. His voice was tight, clipped. "We saw the will, Alex. We need to talk. Can you come over tomorrow? For dinner?" "Sure, Dad. Everything okay?" A pause, filled with static. "Just come over." The knot in my chest tightened again. It wasn't a question. Dinner at my parents' house was a ritual I'd learned to dread. The house itself was a monument to my grandfather's success, a sprawling colonial on a manicured lawn, paid for by the sweat of his brow and the stores that bore his name. Inside, it was all beige carpets and floral wallpaper, a museum of my mother's quiet, controlling disapproval. I walked into the smell of pot roast, a scent that should have been comforting but just felt heavy. My mom, Patricia, gave me a perfunctory hug, her eyes already sliding past me to the door, as if she was expecting someone more important. My dad, Richard, shook my hand, his grip firm, but his gaze fixed on a point just over my shoulder. Matt was already there, sprawled on the couch, in designer athleisure, scrolling through his phone. He looked up, gave a lazy grin. "Hey Alex, big money, huh?" "Yeah, Matt, big money." I sat across from him, the space between us feeling like a continent. Dinner was a master class in passive-aggressive preamble. My mom talked about the garden club. My dad complained about a shipment of lumber that was late. Matt recounted a story about a friend who'd bought a Tesla that was literally so sick. I ate my pot roast and waited for the axe to fall. It fell over coffee. My dad cleared his throat, the sound of gavel in the quiet room. "So, the will. We had a meeting with the family lawyer today." I nodded, waiting. My mom leaned forward, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "It's complicated, Alex. The way it's structured isn't really fair." "Fair?" I said. "It seemed pretty fair to me. We each get $250. You and Dad get the business, and the house. Seems like exactly what Grandpa wanted." My dad's jaw tightened. "It's not about what he wanted, Alex. It's about what's practical. Matt is at a different stage in his life. He's got prospects, opportunities. A lump sum like that could really set him up." "And I don't have prospects?" I asked, the heat starting to prickle at the back of my neck. "I've been working 50-hour weeks at that garage for 5 years. I have a plan for that money." Matt just stared at his phone, a ghost of a smirk on his face. He wasn't even going to pretend this was a debate. My mom stepped in, her voice taking on that placating sing-song tone she used on me when I was a kid, and she was explaining why Matt got a new bike, and I got his old rusted one. "Of course you do, honey, but you're responsible. You'll make your own way no matter what. Matt needs a safety net. He's more sensitive. He needs a leg up." "A leg up," I repeated, the words tasting like ash. "He's 24 years old. He lives in your basement. What exactly does he need $250,000 for? To buy more crypto?" My dad slammed his coffee cup down, sloshing brown liquid onto the white tablecloth. "That's enough. You will not come into this house and disrespect your brother. Your mother and I have discussed it. We're going to consolidate the inheritance. It makes more sense for the money to be pooled. We'll use it to help Matt get into a good franchise opportunity, something with real growth. You'll get your share eventually, when you need it. My blood ran cold. Consolidate? Pool it? You can't just pool my money. It's mine. The will is clear. The lawyer will cut me a check. My mother's eyes turned flinty. The mask of the concerned parent slipped, revealing the cold, calculating core I'd always suspected was there. We've already spoken to the lawyer, Alex. He's an old family friend. He understands the spirit of the will, even if the letter is awkward. We're the executors. We control the disbursement. It will be handled in-house, for the good of this family. The words hung in the air, cold and absolute. My dad, the man who taught me to throw a baseball, wouldn't even look at me. Matt finally looked up from his phone, his eyes flat and triumphant. Family comes first, Alex, my mom said, her voice dripping with a false piety that made me want to be sick. It's selfish to harm your family. Bond over something as trivial as money. Something inside me, something I'd kept protected and hopeful for 26 years, snapped. It wasn't a loud crack, but a quiet, devastating shearing of metal. I pushed my chair back, the legs screeching against the hardwood floor. You're right, Mom. It is selfish to harm a family bond over money, and you three are doing a hell of a job. I looked at each of them. My dad, the coward. My mom, the architect. My brother, the parasite. Don't bother seeing me out. I walked out into the cold night air, my hands shaking. I wasn't just angry, I was robbed. By my own blood. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in slow-motion theft. It was a campaign of gaslighting and bureaucratic obstruction, and I was drowning in it. My calls to the family lawyer, a greasy-haired man named Harrison Crane who'd been at my parents' house for every Christmas Eve I could remember, were met with polite, evasive deflection. These things take time, Alex. There are complexities with the estate. Your parents are simply trying to ensure the most tax-efficient outcome for the whole family. The way he stressed whole family made my skin crawl. I tried to reason with my dad one-on-one. I met him at his office, a cramped space in the back of the main hardware store, surrounded by invoices and the ghosts of my grandfather's hard work. He looked older, tired. Dad, please, just give me my half. You can do whatever you want with Matt's. I don't care. But I need mine. I can't do this without it. He rubbed his eyes, refusing to meet my gaze. Alex, your mother, she has a plan. It's better this way. You'll understand when you're older, when you have a family of your own. I don't have a family of my own because you and Mom never treated me like I was part of this one. The words exploded out of me, raw and desperate. Was I adopted? Is that it? Is there some reason you've always looked at me like a stranger? He finally looked at me, and for a fraction of a second, I saw a flicker of something. Guilt, pain, recognition. Then it was gone, shuttered behind the wall he'd always kept between us. Don't be dramatic. Go home, Alex. Let us handle this. I went home to my cramped apartment and I started to rot. I stopped answering calls from friends. I let the dishes pile up. I'd lie on my couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every slight, every Christmas where Matt got the expensive video game and I got socks. Every time, they paid for his college partying, while I worked the night shift to pay for my community college classes. The proof was a lead weight in my stomach. They weren't just favoring him. They were willing to commit a crime, to actively steal from me, just to make sure their favorite got a little more. I was a ghost in my own life, haunting my apartment while my parents dismantled my future. I had no fight left. I was defeated. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. A name I didn't expect. Grandma Eleanor. I almost didn't answer. I couldn't handle another conversation dripping with pity and vague pleas to keep the peace. But something made me swipe the screen. Alex? Her voice was older, thinner than I remembered, but it carried a familiar steel. Hey, Grandma. How are you doing? I'm fine, Alex. I need you to come to the house. My house. The old farmhouse. Tomorrow if you can. 10 in the morning. Sure. Grandma, is everything okay? A pause, I could hear her breathing, a slow, deliberate rhythm. No, Alex, everything is not okay, but it will be. 10 o'clock, don't be late. She hung up. For the first time in weeks, a tiny, fragile spark of something other than despair flickered in my chest. It wasn't hope, it was curiosity, and in the pit of my stomach, a cold, hard certainty. My grandmother knew. My grandparents' farmhouse was a different world. A small, immaculate Cape Cod on 10 acres of land my grandmother still worked herself. Where my parents' house was a showroom, this was a home. It smelled of wood smoke, lemon polish, and the faint sweet aroma of the apples she kept in the cellar. Grandma Eleanor met me at the door. At 85, she was a force of nature compressed into a 5'2" frame. Her white hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes, my grandfather's winter sky eyes, were sharp and clear. She was wearing a simple plaid shirt and sturdy jeans. She looked me up and down, taking in the dark circles under my eyes, the slump in my shoulders. "You look like hell," she said, but her voice was soft. "Come in." I made coffee. I followed her into the warm, familiar kitchen. The same cast-iron skillet hung on the wall. The same worn wooden table sat in the center of the room. She poured me a mug of black coffee that could strip paint, and then she sat down across from me, folding her hands on the table. "Tell me everything," she said. "Don't leave anything out." So I did. I told her about the dinner, about Crane's evasions, about my dad's cowardice. I told her about the years of being second best, of being invisible. I told her how they were planning to steal from me, and how I felt like I was losing my mind. By the time I was done, my coffee was cold, and my throat was raw. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she didn't offer sympathy. She just nodded, a grim, satisfied set to her mouth. "I thought so," she said quietly. "Your grandfather, he saw it all, Alex. He saw the way they treated you. It broke his heart." She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. She slid it across the table to me. It was a handwritten note. My grandfather's handwriting. The same precise script from the will. "Elle, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know how they are. I know they'll try something. The will I had Crane draw up is just for show. It's what they expect. It'll keep them busy while you set things right. Go to the barn, the loose floorboard under the tractor, where I kept the good bourbon. There's a safety deposit box key there. The box is at the bank in Millbrook, the one we've used for 50 years. Not Crane's firm. Everything you need is in there. The real will, the deeds, the instructions. Tell Alex I'm proud of him. Tell him to stand his ground. Don't let them walk on him, no matter who it is. I love you. E. I read it 3 times. The words swam before my eyes. My grandfather had known. He had known. He had anticipated their greed and built a fortress around his last wishes, leaving the key with the one person they would never suspect, the quiet, unassuming woman who baked them cookies and never said a word. I looked up at my grandmother. The steel in her eyes was no longer hidden. It was a blade, honed and ready. "Grandma," I whispered, "what's in the box?" A small, fierce smile touched her lips. It was the smile of a woman who had waited decades for this moment. "Your inheritance, Alex, and the truth. All of it." She stood up, the motion surprisingly spry. "Now go get the tractor. I'm not as young as I used to be, and that floorboard is a bitch to lift." The barn was cold and smelled of hay, old grease, and the profound stillness of winter. Sunlight slanted through the gaps in the wooden slats, illuminating dancing dust motes. My grandfather's old tractor sat in the center, a hulking green mass, frozen in time. I found the loose floorboard exactly where he said it would be, tucked under the rear axle. Beneath it, nestled in the dirt, was a small, rusted metal box. Inside, wrapped in an oilcloth, was a single brass key. An hour later, we were in the small, hushed lobby of the Millbrook Savings Bank. It was a different world from the shiny corporate chains in the city. This place smelled of paper and floor wax. A kindly woman with reading glasses on a chain helped us. Yes, Mrs. Moreau. We've been expecting you. Your husband was very specific about the protocols." She led us into a small, private room lined with safe deposit boxes. She used her bank key, and Grandma Eleanor used the brass key from the barn. The drawer slid out with a smooth, heavy click. We carried it to a small, private viewing room. Grandma Eleanor opened the lid. Inside there were no piles of cash. There were documents. A thick, official-looking envelope from a law firm I'd never heard of, several smaller envelopes, and a piece of paper with a list of account numbers and what looked like GPS coordinates. Grandma Eleanor picked up the thick envelope. Her hands were steady. She slid out the contents and began to read. After a moment, a sound escaped her. It wasn't a cry or a laugh. It was a soft ha of pure, vindicated triumph. She handed the document to me. "Read it, Alex. This is your grandfather's real last will and testament, dated 6 months before the one Crane has. It revokes all previous wills and testaments." I started reading, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I, Elias Moreau, being of sound mind, do hereby bequeath the following: 100,000, not the business, not the house, to my grandson, Matthew Thomas Moreau, in the hope that he will one day find his purpose. I leave the sum of $50,000, Trotsain das, Tumandaus, to Baum Damwam, Fredunzatelm, Tredeldendam, Endesendam be den ders." Till his 30th birthday. 50,000, locked away for 6 more years. To my grandson, Alexander James Moreau, I leave the entirety of my remaining estate, including but not limited to 100% of the shares of Moreau Family Hardware, the full ownership of the family home, and the liquid assets held in the accounts listed in Appendix A, which total approximately $1,200,000 and $200,000. Alex, you have my back, my name, and my saw. Now go build something. I stopped reading. The numbers didn't make sense. The words didn't make sense. I looked up at my grandmother, my mouth open. "He gave me everything?" I whispered. "Why?" Grandma Eleanor reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Because, Alex, you are his legacy. You work like he worked. You think like he thought. He watched your parents turn his company into a cash cow while they drained it dry. He watched them coddle Matthew into a state of permanent uselessness, and he watched them try to break you." Her eyes glistened, but her voice was unwavering. He wasn't going to let them finish the job. This was his final move, a checkmate. The smaller envelopes. I opened one. It was a deed, transferring the farmhouse to Eleanor Moreau, free and clear. The other was a letter to my parents. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I could imagine the cold, precise language, the dismantling of their expectations. My grandmother sat back, her hands folded in her lap. She looked serene, like a general after a long-fought battle had finally, irrevocably, been won. "So, Alex," she said quietly, "what are you going to do now?" I looked at the document in my hands. I thought of my dad's averted eyes, my mom's flinty manipulation, Matt's smug grin. I thought of the garage, the dirt floor, the rusted sign. "First," I said, my voice steadier than I'd felt in months, "we call a new lawyer, a real one, not Crane." I looked at the deed. "Then, I think we need to go talk to Mom and Dad. Together." Grandma Eleanor smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I was hoping you'd say that. We didn't call first. We just showed up. The element of surprise was the only advantage my grandfather had left me, and I wasn't going to waste it." My mom answered the door. She was wearing a cashmere sweater, a glass of white wine in her hand. Her face cycled through confusion, surprise, and then settled into a tight, forced smile when she saw my grandmother. "Mom, Alex, this is a surprise. We're just about to have dinner." Her eyes darted between us, assessing the threat. "We're not staying for dinner, Patricia," my grandmother said, her voice calm and clear as a bell. She walked past my mother into the foyer. I followed. My dad and Matt were in the living room. My dad was watching TV. Matt was on his phone, of course. They both looked up, startled. "What's going on?" my dad asked, standing up. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes. My grandmother didn't sit down. She stood in the center of the room like a monument. "Richard, Patricia, Matthew, we need to have a conversation about Elias's will." My mom let out a small, brittle laugh. "Mother, we've already been through this with Harrison. It's all settled. We're just waiting on the final paperwork to... The paperwork you're waiting on is worthless, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Strong, final. What are you talking about? My dad snapped. My grandmother reached into her large handbag and pulled out the thick envelope. She held it up. This is Elias's true last will and testament, filed with the court in Millbrook this afternoon. The will you have is a decoy, one your husband created to see what you would do. The blood drained from my mother's face. For a second she looked ancient. That's impossible. Harrison Crane is a small-time opportunist who will be lucky to keep his license after the Bar Association hears about his part in this, my grandmother said, her voice dripping with contempt. He was a tool, a poor one. She handed the will to my dad. He read it, his face going through a series of contortions. Shock, disbelief, and then a deep, mortifying shame. He looked at me, and this time, he couldn't look away. Matt, for his part, just looked confused. Wait, so, do I still get my money? No, Matt, I said, turning to him. You get $5,000 when you turn 30, which means you have 6 years to figure out what a job is. His face fell. It was the first honest emotion I'd ever seen on it. My mom found her voice. It was a strangled, desperate thing. This is a joke, this is a trick. You manipulated a grieving old woman into... Don't you dare! My grandmother snapped, her steel flaring. Don't you dare diminish your father's memory by making this about me. He watched you, Patricia. For years. He saw you push Alex aside. He saw you groom Matthew for a life of indolence. He saw you and Richard slowly running his company into the ground with your incompetence and your greed. She took a step forward, and my mother actually flinched like, this was his final judgment on all of you. I looked at my father, the coward. You could have stopped it, Dad, if you'd just given me what was mine, if you'd just been fair, but you couldn't. You had to try and steal it all. And now you have nothing. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, the house that was no longer theirs, the business that was now mine. My dad finally spoke, his voice a croak. Alex, son, we can figure this out. We're family. We need to handle this in-house. The words were so predictable, so hollow, that I almost laughed. You had your chance to handle it in-house, Dad. I came to you. I begged you. You chose this. I looked at my mom, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. You were so worried about money. You called me selfish, but you were the ones willing to commit a crime just to make sure your favorite got a little more. I turned to leave. My grandmother was already at the door. Alex, wait! My mom pleaded, her voice cracking. Where are you going? What are you going to do? I paused at the door and looked back at them. The golden child, slumped on the couch, for once in his life looking genuinely lost. The father, who had just lost everything because he couldn't stand up to his wife. The mother, the architect of my misery, now facing a future with nothing but the consequences of her own actions. I'm going to go save my grandfather's company, I said. I have a lot to learn. I walked out, and I didn't look back. 6 months later, I was in the back office of the main Moreau hardware store, my office now. The greasy invoices were gone, replaced by spreadsheets. The air smelled less of defeat and more of sawdust and potential. I'd hired a new manager, a woman named Sarah, who actually knew how to run a retail operation. We were turning things around. Grandma Eleanor was in the farmhouse, happy and healthy, tending her garden. She came to the store every Sunday for lunch. We'd sit in the break room and eat sandwiches, and she'd tell me stories about my grandfather when he was young. My parents had moved to a small apartment in the next town over. My dad called once, a rambling, apologetic message that I listened to, and then deleted. My mom hadn't spoken to me. Matt had gotten a job at a cell phone store. I heard he hated it. Good. I walked out onto the sales floor. It was a busy Saturday. Families were picking out lumber, paint, tools. I saw a father showing his son how to use a level, his hands guiding the boys. The kid's face was lit up with concentration and pride. I thought about my grandfather's hands, gnarled and strong, teaching me the same thing. My phone buzzed. A text from my contractor. Dirt floor is poured and cured. Ready for the lift install next week. The shop is officially yours. I smiled. I walked over to the tool aisle and picked up a shiny new circular saw. It was sleek, Efficient. A far cry from the heavy, cast-iron beast my grandfather had taught me on. But the principle was the same. You measure twice, you cut once. You build something that lasts, and you never, ever let anyone take it from you. I put the saw back on the shelf and went to help a customer find the right size nail. My phone buzzed again. Grandma Eleanor, don't forget dinner Sunday. I'm making pot roast. You can bring the saw. I have a shelf that needs fixing. I laughed. A real laugh, for the first time in years. I texted back, wouldn't miss it.